Iran's statement contained 10 points. Trump's celebration post contained 0 of them. That is the complete and documented record of the night the ceasefire was announced. The night Trump posted a Truth Social claiming total victory. The networks ran his photo in front of the American flag, and Colbert walked to his desk with a single printed page and read aloud what Iran had actually said. The crowd went silent at the 4th point. It stayed silent through the 10th. What followed, in the room, in the threads, in the 29 million views the clip accumulated in 48 hours, was not shock in the standard sense. Shock requires something unexpected. This was the specific, settled weight of information that had been available in the public record since the ceasefire announcement, that had been cited in every serious foreign policy outlet, that had been translated and published in full, and that the President of the United States had either not read or had read and decided would not be mentioned in his 11-sentence Truth Social, declaring the greatest military victory since World War II. Colbert had been tracking the gap between the claims and the record since March 2nd, since the night Trump launched Operation Epic Fury without congressional authorization from the Mar-a-Lago bunker into a conflict whose objectives he would not define publicly for 17 days. He had said on March 2nd, "I want to point out that I have no idea where this is going or how it gets there." He had said he had spent 25 years talking about this kind of moment and had learned not to stand at the podium like Moses and declare whether it was going to be good or bad. He had said the man's State of the Union had a 2-minute Iran passage in a 2-hour speech. He had said the man's had longer farts. The room had laughed at the fart line. They had laughed at the condom after sex Congress vote line. They had produced the specific strained, this is funny and also terrible laughter of an audience being given permission to process something very large through comedy because the alternative, sitting with the unmediated weight of an undeclared war whose stated objective kept changing between regime change, unconditional surrender, and a whole civilization will die tonight, was not something a Tuesday night audience had the framework to receive without the scaffolding of a joke. Then April 7th, the ceasefire. Trump posted at 6:14 p.m. He said, "Iran has backed down." He said, "Total and complete victory for America." He said, "The brave men and women of our military have done something no military has ever done before." He said, "Iran will never again threaten the United States of America." He said it in caps, in the specific all-caps register of a man transmitting a conclusion that he has decided the evidence supports and that he wants received at maximum volume before anyone has time to read what Iran said. What Iran said, in the official statement issued by the Iranian Foreign Ministry at 6:47 p.m., 33 minutes after Trump's post, was this: Iran has accepted a ceasefire on the basis of a 10-point framework that it presented to the negotiating parties. The 10 points included Iranian retention of enrichment capabilities at reduced levels, the withdrawal of U.S. forces from the Persian Gulf to pre-conflict positions, the preservation of Iranian sovereignty over the Strait of Hormuz under a joint monitoring arrangement, the removal of all sanctions imposed since January 2025, a formal U.S. acknowledgement that Iran's civilian infrastructure was a protected target under the Geneva Conventions, and the establishment of a joint reconstruction fund to be financed by U.S. reparations. It was the 10th point, the reparations, that the crowd went silent at, not because the word was a surprise, because it was on the page Colbert was holding, and the page had been printed from the official Iranian Foreign Ministry statement, and Colbert had been reading it in the flat, even voice he uses for documents that require no editorial assistance. And when he reached the 10th point, he looked up at the camera for one beat before reading it, the specific beat of a man wanting the room to be completely ready. And then he read it and looked at the room and said nothing. The silence lasted 4 seconds. He said, "Total and complete victory for America." He said it in the caps voice, the performance of the all-caps post, the specific vocal rendering of a man shouting into his phone at 6:14 p.m. He said it with the flat delivery of someone demonstrating a contrast rather than performing an emotion. He said, "That is what was posted at 6:14. He said, "This," he held up the page, "is what Iran posted at 6:47. He said, "I want you to tell me which of these two statements describes a country that backed down." The room produced no sound. Confirmation, not silence. The specific absence of sound that a room produces when it has been asked a question it knows the answer to. And the answer is not funny, and the question was not designed to make it funny. He walked from behind the desk, not the standard mid-monologue walk of a host moving to the camera for emphasis, the specific, deliberate walk of a man who has decided that the distance between the desk and the camera is the distance between the performance register and the direct one, and that what he is about to say requires the direct one. He walked to the mark. He held the page at his side. He looked at the camera. He said, 6 weeks ago, Trump gave the longest State of the Union address in the history of the United States. He said, 1 hour and 47 minutes. He said, Iran got 2 minutes of it. He said, for context, the man's had longer farts. He said, and then, 17 days after that address, with no exit strategy and no defined objective and no congressional authorization, he launched a war against a nation of 93 million people. He said, a war whose objective changed from dismantling Iran's nuclear capacity on day 1 to regime change on day 4 to unconditional surrender on day 14 to He looked at the page, a ceasefire on Iran's 10-point framework, including reparations on day 37. He said, that is not a victory. He said it once, in the register of a statement that does not require repetition. He said, that is a documented sequence of objectives, sourced, dated, on record, that moved in a single direction. He said, away from what was claimed on day 1, toward what Iran was willing to accept on day 37. He looked at the page one more time. He set it on the front of the stage, not on the desk, not handed to a producer, placed on the stage floor in the specific gesture of a man setting something down that has been carried far enough and has done what it needed to do. He said, Fox News says I'm rooting against the country. He said it with the specific quiet of a man receiving a characterization and deciding to engage with it directly rather than dismiss it. He said, I want to address that. He said, what I am rooting against is the specific practice of telling the people of this country that a war they did not vote for, did not authorize, and were not consulted on has produced a total and complete victory, while the opposing government simultaneously publishes a 10-point framework that includes American reparations and calls the outcome a crushing defeat for Donald Trump. He said, those two things cannot both be true. He said, one of them is the Truth Social post. He said, one of them is the page I just put on the floor. He looked at the room. He said, I'm going to let you decide which country backed down. He walked back to the desk. He sat down. He looked at the camera one more time, not the held eye contact of a dramatic close, but the brief, specific look of a man who has placed something in the record and is now confirming the room has received it. Then he said, also, Iran's statement was 33 minutes after Trump's post. He said, 33 minutes. He said, you know what that means. He said, Iran was already drafting the 10 points while Trump was still typing in caps. The room broke. The laugh was enormous. The single crack of complete involuntary release from an audience that had been holding a great deal for 11 minutes and had just been given permission to put it down. Trump posted 7 times before midnight. He called Colbert a terrorist sympathizer. He called the Iranian statement Iranian propaganda. He said the 10-point framework was fabricated by liberal media. He said, we won. He said it in the 5th post, the 6th post, and the 7th post. 3 separate posts, each arriving in a different formulation, each one placed beside the Iranian Foreign Ministry statement and the Colbert clip in threads that required no commentary and received none. The scaffolding of the full arc, the undeclared launch, the changing objectives, the whole civilization will die tonight post, the 17 extensions, the ceasefire on Iran's terms, the 10 points, the reparations, the 33-minute gap between Trump's victory post and Iran's victory post, and 7 midnight truth socials from a man who had announced total and complete victory and could not stop posting about it, assembled itself in the public record in the way that documented things assemble when someone with a desk and a camera walks to the front of the stage, sets a page on the floor, and asks a room of 400 people to decide which country backed down. Subscribe right now and turn on notifications. The next confrontation is already building, and once you see what's coming, you'll understand why silence is always louder than power.